Hey, my friends, it is July the 20th, 2024, on a Saturday in Ottawa, Ontario. And what I want to focus on right now, this afternoon, is the OD crisis, of course, and why so many people in their 20s are being affected. Particularly the millennials are being affected with the OD crisis. So, yeah. Let's cut to the chase again. It's 2024 right now. And way back then, after I moved here, when these millennials were little wee babies, back then there was a big boom of young adults in their 20s raising infants who were obviously very dysfunctional, arguing, lots of problems, and addictions of their own back then. However, it wasn't the OD crisis back then. They were drinking, they were fighting, they were into the other kind of drugs back then. But they were definitely dysfunctional, not prepared to have kids in their 20s or even younger than that, and so forth. Now, I remember seeing so many young couples or single young women who were in their 20s or even younger with kids, children, babies, who were really messed up at the time. And I remember back then thinking, how messed up are these kids going to be later on in life? I remember thinking that back then. Well, we got our answer. All these people in their 20s, some of them have good lives, but those in the lower class, middle class, who are dysfunctional, had problems, and so forth back then. Well, look at the OD crisis. That's where they came from. There were so many young adults in their 20s or younger having these kids who were not able to take care of them, responsibly or properly, or abusively, or dysfunctional families and so forth. And I remember wondering, what's going to happen in this generation 10, 20 years down the road? Well, look what's happening. The OD crisis is now rampant among these people, which they had difficult in life as it was before in their very younger days, obviously. In the lower class primarily, but also probably, with families who never used protection to have kids, had the kids, were messed up, and now this is happening now as it is. I remember there was one person who was very young. Oh, I say teenage years, yelling and screaming toward this building where these troublemakers are, screaming that they're animals and how they ruined his life. Back then, he must have been maybe a teenager. He sounded very young. He was definitely a teenager who got messed up by people in the drug world in the building here. And then I would hear him screaming, raging, sometimes even a block away, yelling and screaming because his life got ruined by a bunch of people who basically corrupted him into the drug world, which was back then no ODs happening, but now look what's happening. You got to think about it. You have to think about back then, and you think about what's happening now. I have not heard this person yelling and screaming lately, so I'm not sure if he died of OD himself, or he moved, or he committed suicide, or what. I have no idea. Or is in jail, or what. I don't know. I have not heard this this person screaming since then. But of course, that was many years ago, before the OD crisis, before COVID. So by now he's probably in his 20s. So maybe he did OD. Maybe he's all stoned out on the new drug epidemic going on right now. But yeah, there are two young gentlemen here. They're very nice. I fell down, hit my knees, and they came to make sure I was okay. A lot of these people have good hearts. I mean, they're just messed up with the drugs they've been corrupted into, or got access to, or got lured into, or seduced into. There are different ways they got into it somehow, obviously. And since they legalized the drugs, that does not help at all either. It doesn't only hit the young generation, the millennials, but the millennials in their 20s, and yeah, they are being very, very, very affected by the OD crisis, especially here in Ottawa, Ontario. Wherever you go, you see someone hunched over or something. Like, it's hitting other generations as well, the older generation, a few of them, and a few of them get pressured into it just to try it, which is I don't do any drugs, thank God, but it is it's a gamble on everyone's life. And considering how many lives it has taken, it is a big crisis. Not just among the millennials who have had a bad upbringing. Their parents back then weren't responsible. They had no means of taking care of the kid, more than likely, judging by how many people in their 20s and even younger had kids then, and were basically bad mouthing and very profane. Unfortunately, a lot of them in this area in particular, and other areas all over, I imagine. But yeah, very, very, very tough. Now, I don't know about pregnancies these days. A lot of these people in their 20s are just hooked on the drugs. So I'm not sure they be able to have families. And if they do, are these people doing these drugs, the new drugs now in the market, will the kids be affected in a different way? Like, there are children back in the past who are born with fetal alcohol syndrome and have effects from people doing cocaine and other drugs and so forth. But how is this new generation, the future generation, going to be with this fentanyl crisis and people are hooked on that? How is the next generation going to be? We are slowly committing genocide among ourselves. And that's the thing, among all of us. This OD crisis affecting the young people now, who are our future? And what's going to happen in the future generation after that if they are hooked on the drugs or being knocked off by the ODs? What hope do we have? And immigrants who are coming to Canada, they're going to be targeted big time with racism issues. They're going to be targeted with violence against them due to resentment toward people about several reasons and so forth, besides racism, discrimination, and so forth. As a Indigenous person, I am going through enough racism as it is, and it's getting worse for me. I mean, I don't know how many times a day when people comment that I'm a prostitute when I am not, obviously. Someone said that to me as I was cooking cans. So what I did is I basically was sarcastic, like, yeah, yeah, these cans are my Johns. And the beer store is the pimping supply for the money. So yeah, I'm a prostitute of cans. Other people laughed, but they walked away angrily. But yeah, that was funny. Anywho, yeah, I was thinking about seeing these very young parents with kids, seeing them yelling on their phones using profane language as they were walking with their kids, too many of them. And the kids get exposed to the same kind of atmosphere or the same kind of profanity that they were outletting, and the kids get exposed to that. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that generation is now into the OD crisis, unfortunately. judging by my internal inquisitions about how are these kids going to turn out when they're in their 20s. And now they are in their 20s, and now look what's happening, especially with a lot of problems, a lot of understaffed issues in the police, security. The nurses are going to be quitting. Paramedics, some paramedics are at risk of getting lower in staffing. And yeah, it's very hard to get help. Those who are getting help are at least trying. But yeah. I saw an ambulance go by one time when a young lad had an OD at this resource center. At the resource center outside, he was having an OD. And someone who was actually trained to help has those little finger heartbeat gadgets, checked his heartbeat. And as they were checking, asking him was okay, she knew, like, he can't hear you, he's unconscious, he's ODing. And she was kind of angry at the staff at this place at the time. The sad thing is, when they revived him with the naloxone, he wanted to do drugs again right after. He felt he needed to get high again. And then, like, why do you want to get high again when your life is at risk? He started walking away, like, no, you can't walk away. This only lasts a while, and you can just drop dead after that. I mean, come on. When I was walking down the area of that crisis area, I saw the ambulance going toward this person, and they were like, how many were there? At least 6 or 7 people hunched down, obviously, possibly an OD or in a sedated state from the drug high or drug sedation this drug gives you. As the ambulance was going to go see him, they stopped every few minutes to stop and check every person to make sure they were okay. And it's just horrible. The ambulances are overwhelmed downtown. It's still not getting any better. Drug dealers have the chance to check the drugs for fentanyl. And I understand that there's misinformation going on around about that too. Like, if there's other ingredients involved, that naloxone does not help with the OD. And the fact that the fentanyl is 16 to 18% within a sample, I found out, that is very high and very dangerous. So there has to be more education courses for drug dealers, especially about what is a safe amount. Like, some of them may think maybe 16%, 8% is safe and it's okay, and they take off too fast. And they don't realize that is a very potent amount to kill somebody. So that's the thing. Education needs to be spread out now for the drug dealers. And there has to be more training. More training in our place on naloxone kits, and for drug dealers as well, about testing kits and information on drug testing kits as well. Here in Ottawa, Ontario, there's only one place that has it. So I understand a lot of drug dealers might get frustrated and just walk off, like, I'm not waiting in line forever just to get my drugs tested and take the chance to sell very probable cases of fentanyl that can kill somebody. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth for the drug dealers to just walk off? There should be a law now with the testing kits. There has to be more education for the drug dealers now about the percentage of fentanyl in products and other ingredients that are in the market. It should be actively in courses and workshops all over, like community housing establishments, schools for the kids, especially. Kids can get ODs as well. Drug dealers tend to predatorize people in high school now in schools, so schools have to be educated about that too. And we have to establish something for making drug dealers pay if someone dies of fentanyl. So they will have to be checking out their kits of drugs and then be educated as well for the amount that is safe and not safe. So that is the thing. That's another step future to bring down the OD crisis all over the world. Well, especially here in Ottawa, Ontario, it's really bad. So yeah, that's the thing. Um, there has to be more education and more awareness about the new testing kits. The brand new, the pre-new, there's only one in Ottawa. The government has to make funds to bring more than one Ottawa. There's only one in the central downtown core where the ODs are most rampant. But because it's reaching community housing establishments like Here and Now and other ones around the area, they have to expand this education to these community housing establishments, not just in naloxone training, but the facts of about the testing kits for the drug dealers, the amounts of naloxone, and the new ingredients that can have little effect. There should be CPR training, actually, first aid training more as well. I know it's expensive and I know it's hard to come by, but there should be more access to that as well in case. Maybe even defibrillators have to be put around in more places as well in case someone's heart stops. All kinds of new things have to be done to deal with this OD crisis. And even though the drug dealers have to be educated about the new drug testing kits and made aware that even though it's below 20%, 16%, 18%, that is still very high to kill somebody. And the new ingredients that are added into the drugs kills people as well. So these are the things we have to focus on. It's good they have a drug testing kit, but it's a long waiting list, I imagine. But next step, community housing has to have this kind of education geared up now as well, considering it's hitting community housing way worse than ever it was before. Especially this building here. It's getting bad now here too. So yeah. I think that's about it for my talk for now about the OD crisis, about how millennials are primarily being affected by the OD crisis, about how more education is needed, especially in community housing establishments right now. That is the number one priority. Number one priority. That has to be number one. That's the main thing that counts. And people who have drug people going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, they have to be monitored very closely because this is one of the things that causes these problems in our establishments. Now, I know another YouTuber associate of mine who focuses on the problems within community housing as well. I'm primarily focusing on the OD crisis right now, considering we lost somebody who's normally careful, and there might have been mistakes there about the millennials being affected more than most people, but other people around the age range, around 50 and so forth, are being affected now as well. How can we mix into other things besides just the meth and crack and needles and so forth? It can be affected into weed as well. What next? Cigarettes? Won't be surprising. So we all got to get ready for this OD crisis, which, like a virus, alters as time goes on with new ingredients coming into the mixture that is not affected by naloxone at all, apparently. So we got to be prepared. We have to make educational programs more in community housing establishments, I believe. Because right now it's just beyond downtown core. There are people in community housing establishments who are being affected more than ever. So yeah, we gotta step up our game. We got to help one another. We got to collaborate with one another and do something about this crisis, which is not getting any better but worse. So that's my rant for today. And yeah, there are solutions. If we work together very closely, we can do something about this. Take care, stay safe, and yeah, I'll tell you guys another time. Have a safe Saturday night. Watch your back, and please watch out for one another. Take care, make witch. Talk to you guys soon.